honoured to be joined by two extraordinary thinkers, and I do mean thinkers in the fullest sense. First, we have the Bishop of Bath and Wells, the Rt Rev Michael Beasley. Joining him, Dr. Mohammed Gamal Abdelnour, Imam of the Bath Islamic Centre. Together, they'll be exploring a deceptively simple question. Can you be both a scientist and a theologian? It's a question that invites us to consider not just the compatibility of two disciplines, but the nature of truth itself. Is it found in the lab, the scripture, or somewhere in between? Perhaps in the space where wonder meets wisdom. After their reflections, we'll open the floor to your questions. Please don't be shy. This is a space for respectful curiosity, for dialogue that doesn't demand agreement, but invites understanding.
I like to begin by thanking Tawbi and Andy and Lord Lieutenant Muhammad Sadiq for facilitating the whole conversation, and I'm absolutely privileged to have the honor of sharing a platform literally for the third time with Bishop Michael. We've been having insightful conversations publicly over the past year. We began in Bath, and then in Bath University, and this is literally the third time. Every time we come to a conversation, the audience would expect us to really somehow debate and come up with diverse conclusions. They are always surprised that we come out with more, points of agreements than we have points of disagreements. And that speaks really to the nature of the Abrahamic tradition. The Jewish, the Christian, and the Muslim tradition, they all belong to the monotheistic camp, so to speak. The question that we've been asked to really tackle is a very subtle one. On the surface, it seems simple. Can someone be a scientist and a theologian at the same time? The way I like to really tackle this is to begin by asking another question. That is, why is this even a question? Why is it urgent and pressing today that we ask this question? To me, this just speaks to the crisis that we have today as humans, which is the fragmentation of knowledge, a crisis of fragmentation. What do I mean by this? Knowledge is very powerful, and the modern world has witnessed advances in various ways. But the knowledge that we've produced in the modern world has often been divided, if not fragmented. You have biology here, psychology over there, philosophy, theology somewhere in the middle, if not even pushed to the margins. And one fails to really see the relationship between these disciplines. You have a physicist who studies motion, an economist who studies markets, a jurist who studies law, a theologian who studies God, but they are doing this in silos, basically. What we call today specialization, to me this word specialization is just a form of euphemism somehow. Mainly because, despite the fact that specialization did produce some depth and technical progress, it equally gave us disconnection, equally gave us division between those disciplines. We as people who live in the modern and postmodern world have recognized this problem. And that's why throughout the 20th century, scholars have come up with what is known today as interdisciplinarity. interdisciplinarity. And the whole point of interdisciplinarity is to move from a position of existence. What I mean by this is that we have disciplines that exist. Physics exists, biology exists, theology exists. What interdisciplinarity does is that it literally moves us from a position of existence to a position of coexistence. How can we get those sciences and disciplines to speak to one another, to coexist? So we started to see doctors working with psychologists, engineers working with perhaps ethicists, philosophers working with scientists. But we've realized something up to this very moment. And when these people come in conversation, everyone clings to their own foundations, to the foundations of their own disciplines. And that raises the question of what is the problem? We are trying to coexist, we are trying to cooperate. But why is it not really happening? To me, as a theologian who comes from the Muslim tradition, the problem is that we are missing the centerpiece. The center is missing. And the center to the Muslim tradition is literally God. And if I'm taking a Quranic approach to this, the Quran would not be happy with just an interdisciplinary approach, even though this is a good step towards the right direction. But the Quran really advocates for transdisciplinarity. With this sort of transdisciplinarity, we move from a position of coexistence to a position of subsistence, where all these disciplines subsist in the reality of God. It is from God that everything comes, and it is to God that everything goes back. The Quran speaks of this quite clearly. There's a verse in the Quran that says, سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي الْآفَاقِ وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَهُمْ أَنَّهُ الْحَقُّ. So the verse is literally saying, we will show them, meaning humans, our signs in the horizon. That is a reference to physical sciences or physical things. وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ. And then we will show them our signs in the metaphysical world. That is, that extends to the soul, the afterlife, and all the signs that refer to God, basically. Then the verse says, so that they may come to know that God is the real, or is the reality upon which the two dimensions subsist, the metaphysical and the physical worlds. So in the Quranic perspective, the metaphysical sciences and the physical sciences, they all subsist in God. What does that mean? It literally means that the disciplines that we come up with, they would have to go back to this, they are working within a unified system. God is the unifying thread. And therefore, those disciplines would end up not being divided, but rather being directed, not neutral, but rather meaningful. And that's why literally the most foundational concept in Islam is the concept of Tawheed, that is monotheism. Monotheism, linguistically, comes from the Arabic word wahada. Wahada literally means to make one. To make one out of many. To try and see the uniting and the unified thread behind the diversity that we see in the world. So, God, from the Muslim perspective, is the one who is behind this whole world. And the Quran does not really mention words like a scientist or a theologian, does not see this sort of dichotomy anyway. The word the Quran uses for a specialist is the word alim. An alim literally, can be translated as a scholar. But again, semantically or linguistically, alim is literally the one who deciphers the signs of the physical world and the signs of the metaphysical world, literally. So, and that gives the alim or the scholar some sort of a holisticity. A view that gives that person a holistic view, rather than an atomistic view that is based on a given discipline. Right? Let me cite this verse from the Quran that again speaks to this fact, this sort of holisticity. There's a verse in the Quran that says, أَلَمْ تَرَ أَنَّ اللَّهَ أَنزَلَ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً. Don't you observe that God sends down from the sky rains? فَأَخْرَجْنَا بِهِ ثَمَرَاتٍ مُخْتَلِفًا أَلْوَانُهَا. With this rain, we produce so many diverse fruits. ومن الجبال جدد بيض وحمر مختلف ألوانها وغرابيب سود. And we produce so many different mountains and different shapes and colors. ومن الناس والدواب والأنعام مختلف ألوانه كذلك. The same applies to people. We have people of different colors. That's what the verse is saying. People of different kinds, of different backgrounds. Animals of different colors and different shapes. Livestock of different colors and different shapes. And then the verse ends with this comment, إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاءِ. The people that have the capacity to see these, to observe these signs in those realms, the realm of natural science mentioned at the beginning, the realm of geology with mountains, the realm of biology with animals and livestock, are the people that can decipher those signs. And when we look at this verse, the verse is not talking about spirituality, it's talking about natural sciences. And it names the people who have the capacity to decipher the signs of those sciences, the scholars. And that leads me to really the heart of our question tonight. Can someone be a theologian and a scientist at the same time? And the answer is absolutely, as Bishop Michael had said. Absolutely yes. Oh, actually we should ask, what happens if we are not both? That's a disaster, really. What happens if we learn the how of things, that is science, but we fail to ask and raise the question of the why of things, which is the function of theology, and the aim of things, really? We end up with so many problems like the ones that we have today, especially with the rise of artificial intelligence. Think of climate change, the sense of responsibility that comes with it, our responsibility towards the generations to come. These questions have only, arisen with the Industrial Revolution, but they have become so pressing today. Surveillance, capitalism, genetics manipulation. All these questions cannot be answered on the basis of science alone. Otherwise, we end up with literally what we're facing today. Technological advancement, but spiritual confusion. Artificial intelligence, but emotional emptiness. Instant communication, but broken relationships. How did we end up with this? It's mainly because we've been focusing on this sort of one dimension that have disconnected these disciplines from one another. So to reiterate what the bishop had said, the answer to this question is an absolute yes. And that's actually, there is no better time that we need to really revisit the relationship between science and theology than the time that we're having in today's time. Thank you.